Good morning, you're just in time. I've got the time machine warmed up and we're going back 20 years to the year 2006. What's that? Snacks? No, we'll buy them when we get there. They were much cheaper back then. But you should bring plenty of water because they didn't have drinking fountains on every street corner like they do today. Although a lot of garden taps on stations worked, so there's that. Okay, are you ready? Take a deep breath. 2006, here we come. Okay, we made it. Looks like we're at Southern Cross Station, or Spencer Street as we still called it back then, because it had only been renamed a couple of years earlier. You'll notice we're floating in the air. That is one of the strange conditions of time travel. It helps eliminate the Back to the Future paradox and all that clever sciencey stuff. Anyway, we can't see through the roof, so let's head out to North Melbourne. Now you have to remember, North Melbourne never got its southern footbridge until later, and the station office was up here, and there was a gate that led out onto the street. This is what it looked like back then. I took this photo because it was weird to have a Connex Comeng in M-Train territory, but of course it was a racecourse line service. Platform 6 normally carried Geelong line services, which were real trains back then. Sometimes it carried both at once, and Platform 4 had Sprinter services. But the best thing about North Melbourne Station was the footbridge that would take me to Dyna Loco. There was a Met card validator just here, and I'd walk along this footbridge. Now, don't forget, this was 2006. It was a different world, and if I catch you doing anything like this today, there will be hell to pay. Occasionally, I'd look at the Sable Sparks, but there was a lot more to see than that. I'd walk down here to this junction, usually putting on my high-vis vest as I went. Now, this section just led to the roadway, but it didn't really go anywhere after that. I preferred this section. You'd see a whole lot of the stored wagons over here. And if you had a death wish, you could go over this footbridge to see them better. But it was pretty close to falling down. But I liked this path along here. It ran right beside the main line that ran over the North Melbourne flyover to Southern Cross. And as I was walking, I might see something like this. Or maybe this. And then as I got a bit further along the path, well, if you've never heard of creek sighting, blame the regional rail link, but that was my idea of absolute Gunzel heaven. A couple of years earlier, it had been the headquarters of Great Northern Rail, but they'd been taken over by this time. It was still a useful sighting for bogie exchanges, especially with its absolutely massive gantry crane. Hey, look, he's pushing the bogie into place by hand. I've done that sometimes. Oh yeah, they commission new wagons here too, or sometimes modify old ones. I've no idea what happened to this ex-West Coast, ex-Southern Aurora dining car. It was probably transferred back to standard gauge to go back to New South Wales size. I guess the same was happening with this sleeper car too. They used some fairly strange motive power at creek signing, depending who owned it. Ew, look at that horrific six-wheeler. Once I got sick of creek sighting, I would continue down this same path. Bus shelter just there. Weird. No idea why it's there. There was a level crossing just before the Muni Ponds Creek, this one here, which would allow me to get some different angles. Not that I hung around there very much because right in front of me would be the standard gauge turntable. Depending on the time of day, I might see something like this. Or with a generous helping of luck, maybe something like this. The main container terminal was right beside the turntable, and I might see something like this. And the dine and car shed was behind that, and who knows what you might see there. Of course, I wanted to do the right thing and head into the manpower office to sign in. I was just here. Back then, they didn't care. I'd just say, "Hi, I'm a train enthusiast and I want to take some photos." And they just make me sign in and out on the visitors book. There were rules to follow, obviously, no climbing on locos, stick to the paths, that kind of thing. But basically, they didn't care. It's different today. The only people who can get in are employees. Do not try this at home or here. From the manpower office, the world was my oyster. This path down here led to the loco stabling roads, these ones here, and then the broad gauge turntable, and the tracks that led across Footscray to the docks, which were under the CityLink bridge. And the steel terminals head shunt was there too. Yeah, somewhere here. Yeah, that head shunt there. Or I could head over to the fuel point, which was, yeah, and then the side of the car shed, and then the back of the workshop, and then the rotten row of dead Y-class locos, and all this other stored stuff around here. If I went further, I would get to the wagon maintenance center, but that was a very long walk away, and by this time I usually had plans to make and places to be. Okay, that's an overview. Let me show you a few photos. Here's X38, back when XRs were still called X's. Here's V544 when it was fairly new. Here's a T that now runs with 707 operations. And of course, there were X's everywhere. And heritage units too. On the turntable, here's B65 in Smurf blue. Oh, whoops, that's me. Get that off the screen. Three S's in a row, and at that time, only one of them was in preservation. Okay, I'm going to flick through these fairly fast. There's plenty of photos around from back then. Just get some newsrails if you want to look closer. Before getting to the dock access area, I might get to a few wagons just randomly sitting around, even newly modified ones. And PN had just taken over, so things got painted too. One time I saw the Portlink train. This was just after they'd added a track circuit onto the level crossing. Before that, they had to stop the train, jump down, and hit a button to trigger the booms. The fuel point was a fun place to visit. You could see normal stuff all the time, so I really only took photos when it was something interesting. Interesting from back then, not interesting now. Moving further westwards, there was all sorts of fascinating stuff to see. Some of it was in service, some of it was stored. I usually had no idea. Now, I'm going to say it again. For the love of all that's holy, don't go in there today. Not only is there nothing interesting to look at apart from velocipedes, but you will give train enthusiasts a bad name. I seriously don't know why nobody kicked my tailbone into next week just strolling around taking photos, even back then. Anyway, that was Dynon. Let's keep heading west to Footscray. Now, this is before the regional rail link, so it only had four platforms. The footbridge was kind of new. The donut place was still open. It was one of these shops, I think possibly this one. And check out the kind of trains I could see. Another casualty of the regional rail link was the restaurant on the Nicholson Street Bridge with a balcony overlooking the rail line. It was called Small Poppies, and I actually met the owner many years later, incidentally. But at the time, we used to just go there as a group of gunzels, have a feed and a drink or three, and just watch the trains go by.
Looks alright, doesn't it?
Just see that. Oh, H1. I've got that down. I've got that down. That's why they had the before. No, I thought it was before this one.
Now, what's now Middle Footscray Station car park was just a big open paddock back then. Yeah, I know that sounds like what your parents say whenever they drive through some suburbs, but yeah, we used to hang out there sometimes and watch the movements. There was no regional rail link, remember, so the V-line services mixed it with the Sparks, which looked like this, or sometimes this. Yeah, there were quite a few of these still around back then. And of course, there were NRs in plenty, some vaguely interesting, most not. But this was
Exactly
interesting.
the same photo as me, nearly. Fleet. That's one.
That's an ex-Overland crew car there, JRA5. There might sometimes be interesting second units.
Oh, fuck you, birds.
I do believe that was Shax speaking. If you've ever heard the expression blame Shax, now you know what he thinks of birds in his photos. Now, here's something interesting. Back before SCT owned their own locos, they had a hook and pull contract with Freight Australia, so you'd occasionally see 3Gs in a fuel tanker wagon heading out to Laverton to pick up a train and take it to Perth. Now, the next thing I want to show you is Tottenham Yard. Oh, that is West Footscray Station. West Footscray got completely demolished and redesigned for regional rail link. Anyway, back then, Toddy Yard was absolutely full of stored wagons. They hadn't been used for decades, even back then. They were covered in graffiti, and they should seriously have been scrapped a lot of years earlier than they were. I mean, look at them all. You got sand, sand wagons, still sitting there after all the sand started being taken by road. Louver vans, flat wagons, all the traffic that had died off back in the 1970s. It was an absolute eyesore. Now, these oil tankers over here, they had a few stories flying around. Some people said they were actually owned by the oil company, so they couldn't be scrapped without a signed contract. Other people said they were full of flammable fumes, so as soon as you'd start cutting, there'd be an explosion. I don't know what the story was, but they all got cleared out with the rest a few years after this. And moving right along, here is Sunshine. Three platforms, no overpass, just a pedestrian underpass running sort of along here, this line here, which you can still see the signs of if you're ever there with time to kill. So there you go. That is the Inner West as I remember it all those years ago. The regional railing did an absolute number on the whole area, but at the same time, the transport service is an order of magnitude better than it was back then. Hope you enjoyed your trip in my time machine, and hopefully in another 20 years, you can make a video like this for the generation of Gunzels after you.